Thank you, everybody, for joining us this afternoon. I'll spend the next 25-30 minutes or so going through Poolbeg, our updated presentation, updating you on recent activities. And again, as Mark said, happy to take questions at the end. So again, as a reminder, it was great to see so many Poolbeg investors on the call. And for those not, we are developing a portfolio of innovative treatments for diseases with unmet medical needs. And I'll go through these in some detail. And again, as a reminder, we're developing innovative medicines. We've got a pipeline targeting large addressable markets. I think most interestingly of late, we're now using AI to identify novel drug targets, which using unique human challenge trial data that we have access to from our colleagues at hVivo. So again, we've been able to accelerate and identify some very exciting targets in a very short period of time, working with 2 AI companies. It's a unique business model. We believe so that moving forward, developing portfolio of assets very rapidly, very quickly, getting human data as quickly as possible, and then ultimately partnering with pharma. And that's where we'll generate our early revenue through those partnerships. The team itself, an exceptional track record in the industry. Again, it's worth highlighting most recently our chairman, Cathal Friel, was part of the founding family of Amryt Pharma back in 2015, recently exited, acquired by Chiesi for 1.48 billion. So a lot of knowledge and experience in the industry itself, and of course, moving products forward, but of course, getting products licensed and companies acquired even. So a very strong focus on business development as we move forward. Happily, in these somewhat challenging times, we have a very strong cash balance as of June this year, 14.1 billion in the bank. And again, we operate a very efficient model, so that gives us a long runway. And also supplementing this with non-dilutive grant funding. And we have a success to date, I'll speak to later on. So again, in these kind of post-COVID times, there's a lot of interest in funding, certainly infectious disease programs. It's been quite a busy and productive year for Poolbeg, and these are just the highlights, among several others. But happily, earlier in the year, we got positive results from our LPS human challenge trial, which effectively gives us confidence that now we have a drug in our hands in POLB 001 for application into several acute inflammatory conditions, including severe influenza. And then more recently, we strategically expanded into an oncology setting. And very excited about that and the potential that has to help patients, but obviously in a very lucrative market as well. The AI programs have been quite successful for us. Using our unique data set, we were able to identify novel drug targets from our influenza program that now we're moving forward with, and moving forward into lab-based validation for drugs identified in our respiratory syncytial virus AI collaboration with 13 Biotech. So again, making progress there. It's very exciting to see. And again, we have another collaboration around oral delivery of drugs, an oral vaccine. We've got encapsulation validation is ongoing right now. We hope to have news on that relatively soon. Again, this is non-dilutively funded by the Irish government. And again, we're doing our clinical trial design preparation for an oral GLP-1 agonist proof of technology clinical trial next year. And very excited to see that going, because again, that's a very substantial market where we hope to play a significant role. And again, more recently, using the encapsulation technology we've licensed, we have expanded into a strategic collaboration with a NASDAQ-listed biopharma company to orally deliver a drug for metabolic disease. So again, very busy. I know we're heading kind of 10 months into the year, but it's been very active, and of course, very busy to the last 2 months as well, is our intention. Again, a snapshot of our exciting portfolio of products and partnerships. 001 for severe influenza, as mentioned, finished up an LPS challenge study, phase 2 ready, branching into oncology, where again, I'll talk about that later on, but a significant issue is the cytokine release syndrome that POLB 001 can play a significant role in ameliorating. So again, phase 2 ready with discussions ongoing with partners. 002 and 003, we're putting these into the non-dilutive funding. We intend to seek funding for those and to move those forward. But again, on the partnerships fronts, and this is where we've been active, we said on the business development front, in the 2 collaborations, AI collaborations have been quite productive to date. So very excited about the outputs from that. And again, we have mentioned the 2 oral delivery technologies, the GLP-1 with Anabio, along with oral vaccines. So again, pretty robust pipeline, but again, the goal here is several shots on goal, and any one of these successes will be, quite productive and quite lucrative for Poolbeg. I will spend a few minutes now on POLB 001, our lead asset, and give you an update on the activities there. Again, indicated right now as an internal pipeline looking at severe influenza and the oncology indication. Again, very excited from a clinical standpoint. Again, being in the clinic is exciting for a company like Poolbeg. It is now phase 2 ready. It's an oral drug, immunomodulator blocking P38 MAP kinase that inhibits inflammation in humans. And again, we've been through phase 1 previously, safe, well tolerated, predictable, durable exposure. So very happy with what we've seen so far. But we wanted to take that to the next step and see how it works in an inflammation setting, how it blocks or how it reduces inflammation in this LBS challenge study. And data read out early this year, so positive data generated, and very excited about that. And again, as a small molecule, shelf stable, ideal for stockpiling, and it's all about pandemic preparedness now in the next wave. We shouldn't say if it comes, but when it comes, there'll be potential there to have a stockpile drug for the next pandemic. So again, potential utility across several acute inflammatory diseases. That's where cytokine release syndrome is a key component. And again, as I said, severe influenza and oncology is where we're looking at right now. Importantly, in our sector, in our industry, patents are very important. So we've got patent protection out to 2038 for severe influenza, and then filed patent applications early this year for the oncology setting. So again, being very careful to protect our programs, protect our assets. So again, large addressable markets. We've always talked about the impact about influenza. 11 billion in the US alone is the economic burden. 3 to 5 million severe influenza cases identified, and there's 500,000 deaths globally every year from influenza. So looking for solutions there. And again, the cytokine release syndrome in oncology is a recently recognized issue that now we think we may have a potential treatment for that as well. So, single drug, multiple diseases, that's exactly what pharma looks for in a partner. As a reminder, the mechanism of action of POLB 001 is to block the progression of life-threatening cytokine release syndrome, or CRS. And this is where your immune system is overactive or overexcited, when following triggering by a different insult, let's say. We know from a severe influenza that plays a role in the severe disease aspect of it. And also we recall seeing this in the COVID-19 pandemic as well, where the more severe cases had this cytokine storm. But interestingly, more recently, it's been identified as issues for a new wave of oncology drugs that they're using the body's immune system to go after the tumors themselves, but you have the CRS as a side effect. So overall, you have this immune overactivation. What happens here on the right-hand side, you have immune cell activation, you've got cytokine secretion, which then recruits other immune cells into the site of inflammation. And what happens is that, for the majority of us, it kind of resolves over time. But for those unfortunate few, it's kind of a downward spiral where ultimately there's a lot of cytokines in situ and you have a breakdown of tissues and organ damage. But we believe POLB 001 can block that progression of CRS and ultimately block the inflammation, allowing the patients to recover and recover quickly. So again, as I say, excited about the potential for that across multiple inflammatory or acute inflammatory conditions. We've mentioned in the past that having clinical data is critical and it's key to attracting our pharma partners. And we were delighted early this year to get the results, the outputs from our LBS challenge study. As I say, this is a study that was run in the Netherlands. We had 36 volunteers. We dosed them with LPS, which is a bacterial fragment, which tricks their immune system into thinking they have an infection, so mobilizes all of the immune cells. So we wanted to see how our drug worked in that setting, in that immune inflammatory stimulated setting. So we were happy to identify that the P38 MAP kinase, the target itself, was blocked. It was inhibited from activation through phosphorylation in the presence of our drug. Again, so we know the drug finds and binds to inhibit the target. But we also saw the knock-on effects of triggering with LPS, that there was a reduction, significant reduction in key cytokines like TNF-alpha, interleukin-6, interleukin-8, across, as I say, the doses that were used, particularly the medium and high dose. So very excited to see this because, again, knowing the drug works. And we saw a clear dose-response relationship, so everything was impressive from that standpoint. So this helps us understand what dose to take forward with in future clinical trials. Importantly, the drug was safe and was well tolerated. And again, so that gives us confidence what we have to move forward with. So now it's a case of partnering is forefront on our mind, and bringing this data forward to partners and having those discussions about the applications of this drug. And as I say, we've got a clinical study report completed and a virtual data room established for review partners. So very exciting time for the company. I will mention about the CRS in oncology treatments. This is relatively recent, relatively new, but it's a significant issue. So CAR-T is a treatment where, particularly for currently for leukemias and lymphomas, where you take out a patient's T cell, you re-engineer it, bring it back into the patient's cells, and basically instructs the T cell to go after the tumor in the patient. But what happens is that up to 95% of these patients develop the CRS side effects. So even though they're happy with the efficacy of these CAR-T cell drugs, you have this CRS side effect, which becomes an issue not just for the patients themselves, but for the burden on the healthcare system. So if there was a way to eradicate CRS, it would make life a lot easier for the healthcare system and the patients themselves. So again, it comes in various stages. It can be life-threatening in a more severe setting, as we know, and as we've seen in the recent pandemic. So again, this is kind of an issue that once is looking for a solution, looking for a resolution, and we believe POLB 001 can be that solution. So again, talking to to partners, to pharma partners, where this is an issue for them, and the potential then of running a clinical trial, building on that next year, doing trial enabling activities currently to put that into the oncology setting. And it is worth saying that this is not treating the cancer itself. So we're not looking at long-term, 2 or 3 year clinical trials. These are very short clinical trials where we'll get that inflammation, that immunology readout very quickly, which again is sufficient to take forward into further testing with partners. So very excited about that approach. And again, as I say, it's something where we've identified a potential application for POLB 001, and we're moving forward rapidly with that to generate key data. I will spend a few minutes now in the next section on our AI, artificial intelligence programs. Again, this is unlocking insights from unique human challenge data. And I cannot emphasize this enough. The data that we're using here, nobody else has. This was generated by our colleagues at hVivo and now being applied by Poolbeg to identify new drugs and new drug targets for disease. So this is why it's unique. It's clean data. It runs, as you know, hVivo run their human viral challenge studies. In stage 1 here, they bring in healthy volunteers. They're well screened, they're highly screened. They bring them in, their medical history is documented. And you understand what they're like when they're healthy. From a baseline standpoint, you take their samples, you know what their immune system is like. But then you inoculate, you challenge them with a virus. And the data we're using is influenza and RSV. And what happens then 24, 48 hours later, they develop symptoms, develop mild disease. And then ultimately after a week, 10 days, they kind of recover and are discharged from quarantine setting. So importantly, we've got samples from, twice a day from all of their time within their quarantine setting. And we're able to take this data and analyze it, look at the gene expression, look at the protein expression. So it's multi-paramic. It's, we're looking at clinical, biological, and digital endpoints here. We know the infection point, which is critical when you're analyzing this data. So we know what they're like when they're healthy. We know when they get an infection. And then we know how they're responding through the course of disease. So very clean data and ideal for application or interrogation by artificial intelligence, because of this cleanliness of the data. So again, in a very controlled environment. And then we've supplemented this as well with external publicly available data from hospitalized severe influenza patients in the case of our collaboration with Cytoreason. So you're able to kind of compare the healthy person to when they're sick, but then to people who are very sick as well. So it gives us a good understanding of disease progression and how we apply that and come up with new drug targets. So for each volunteer, we get 6 gigabytes of data, which I assure you is quite a lot. So what do we do? How do we interrogate and analyze that? And this is where our AI collaborators come into play. So industry-leading collaborators who take this high-quality data, supplement with public databases. They build these unique disease models, understanding what goes on from a time standpoint, from a gene and protein expression standpoint, how the body, how the immune system responds or reacts to infection. And then we do the in-depth analysis, looking for new drug targets and treatments that then we can bring into preclinical and clinical testing. So we were delighted to work with both Cytoreason and 1-3, who were pretty astounded by the quality of the data that we brought with them, which I suppose essentially made their lives easier, that they could take this data, put it into their AI platforms, interrogate it, and come up with new drug targets and ultimately new drugs. So one slide on each collaboration, just to highlight. 13 Biotech based in New York. They have other programs that are clinically validated, especially in the oncology setting. So they took our data, they interrogated, they looked at a whole area of what drugs were out there, drugs that had toxicology profiles, for example. They understood what happened from our disease progression standpoint, and then they kind of married up the drugs to our disease progression, questioning which drugs would interfere with that disease progression and hence have potential to be RSV treatments. So again, this is a very rapid study. We started the collaboration towards the early 2022. And again, by the end of the year, we had outputs that we had to work on. So now we're progressing that into lab-based validation. We did prioritize drugs that were previously in the clinic. So now working through lab-based validation and make them partnering ready. So again, very productive collaboration with our colleagues at 13. And again, as a reminder, RSV is still an issue annually. It's number one cause of hospitalization in infants, anybody under the age of 5, where they have an immature immune system. There's significant issues there. And of course, in the elderly as well. You'll see there's 177,000 hospitalizations for those over 65 with 4,000 deaths. So there's a need for more treatments out there for RSV. And similarly for influenza, our collaboration with Cytoreason, again, highly productive. They have a different approach. They have a different disease model that they took our data. We had a very close, very tight collaboration, bringing in infectious disease specialists, immunologists, bioinformaticians, working through the data. They have a very interesting approach where they're able to work back from your gene expression to understand when and where these genes are expressed. By that, I mean which immune cells are expressing those genes. So that helps us understand the disease and how to, how the immune system responds. And of course, ultimately coming up with targets that you can generate a drug or identify a drug for that then will benefit the patients who are suffering from influenza. So again, unparalleled insights into disease progression, and obviously now moving those drug targets forwards to validation and making them partnering ready. And again, that's a very exciting time from a company standpoint, to have concluded these collaborations, especially given the caliber, the high quality of their existing collaborators. And you can see here, Cytoreason have a long-term collaboration with Pfizer, also working with Roche, Sanofi, and Merck. But we were delighted that we were their first infectious disease company that they partner with. And again, it's down to the uniqueness of the data, and they did a terrific job working with us on that. Again, as a reminder, influenza is still a significant issue. 1 billion cases annually. I hope there's you're getting your flu jabs out there right now. It's that time of the year. But every year there's 5 to 10 million hospitalizations, and as I mentioned earlier, 500,000 deaths globally for severe influenza. And obviously, we're very keen to come up with solutions to that. I'll switch now onto our oral platforms. As I said, we're focusing both on oral vaccines as well as metabolic conditions with our collaborator at AnaBio. So again, what we're doing here is oral. We're encapsulating drugs, kind of proteins, peptides, into so that we can take it orally. It survives the stomach, gets into the small intestine, and then the pH change allows it to dissolve, and then the carrier, the cargo gets into systemic circulation. We are in an exciting space right now where we're progressing with an oral GLP-1 agonist clinical trial to begin in the first half of next year. So we're doing the trial preparation activity right now. This is exceedingly exciting space because GLP-1 agonists of late, they've been on the market for quite a while to treat diabetes. But of late, they've seen in very large clinical trials, they've seen that these drugs have significant benefit to patients, obese patients. So again, it's again from a health benefit, you see significant reduction in weight while you're on GLP-1 agonists. Also benefits for cardiovascular disease, and more recently there's been data on renal and kidney disease. But majority of the drugs that are on the market as GLP-1 agonists are delivered through injection. And pharma companies are always looking for new technologies where they can move away from injections and move into oral delivery. And contingent upon the data we generate in this clinical trial, this is a very exciting space. And again, this is a short clinical trial that we will likely start and finish in 2024 and have it, again, as I say, partnering is always a forefront for Poolbeg, and have it partnering ready. And again, recently we just announced that we're branching again, still in the metabolic disease space, but we've established a partnership with a NASDAQ-listed biopharma company using that technology to orally deliver a drug that they're working on. As I say, moving away from needles is the ultimate goal. And, based on the data coming from that prototype, we hope to expand into a full licensing agreement for a long-term collaboration. So again, we're able to do that with other metabolic diseases as well. So very excited about that. On the bottom, just briefly, I'll go bottom right. You can see the size of the GLP-1 agonist market and how astounding it is and how significant it is. And as I say, it's linking to diabetes, to obesity, and for cardiovascular and renal disease. So this looks like a drug that will be around for quite a long time, but having it orally delivered will be significant from a market penetration standpoint. And then secondly, for our collaboration with AnaBio, we're looking at oral vaccines. And this is, again, importantly, a collaboration that is non-dilutively funded. We secured government grant funding from the Irish government last year. Poolbeg is leading this collaboration with AnaBio, University College Dublin, who have some exciting antigens, and then Trinity College Dublin, who bring adjuvants which stimulate the immune system to the collaboration. So the ultimate goal here, again, is moving away from injections. And when you take a vaccine, in particular orally, you want to trigger mucosal immunity. And what mucosal immunity does, it blocks infection at the site of infection. So it's not a case of you're just reducing symptoms, for example, you're actually blocking the infection. So significant benefits there. So working towards encapsulation validation, that's going on right now. So we hope to have that completed by the end of the year. So again, it's nice that this is grant funded. Our collaborators are working really hard on pushing these forward. But as I say, having a grant funded, it doesn't hit our bottom line as such. But we're looking forward into kind of trying to add to other grant funding to Poolbeg in the not too distant future. I'll wrap this up now just as a reminder of the business model. We've talked a little bit about the programs, but ultimately, where do we want to end up? So it is identifying or bringing in these high potential opportunities in step one. We did, as I said, the non-dilutive funding in green. We have brought that in and intend to bring in more. These early major value inflection points, and I mentioned before, clinical data is what key. So it's great that we have that in our hands right now for 001, which allows us to kind of progress into later stage clinical trials with partnerships in phase 2. And again, ultimately partnering and licensing with these pharma partners who we well know that their expertise is in clinical development and commercialization, and they've got the deep pockets to bring these forward and add their own expertise, as I say, from a clinical standpoint. But that's how we generate a revenue, kind of partnering through those. So again, getting the wheel turning is what the ultimate goal of Poolbeg is doing. So we're moving in the right direction in that sense, and excited for the future. I think importantly as well, it's a portfolio approach. This is not one drug we're focused on and hoping for the best it'll get there. So there's multiple drugs. So any single drug will be a significant, that we partner will be significant from a Poolbeg standpoint. We have a fantastic team here, fantastic due diligence team, bringing in products with a clear market potential and moving those forward. And as I say, non-dilutive funding, the ultimate goal. And the team, we have a great team to execute on the strategy and move those forward. And as you saw on an earlier slide, we've had a very, very productive 2023. Everybody working really hard to drive the programs forwards and get us to those inflection points. And this is, again, just a sample how the appetite for deals with pharma is quite high and significant. So on the left-hand side is just infectious disease deals of late. Pfizer very active in this space, acquiring a company, Reviral, who are in the RSV space, similar to ourselves. They've got a vaccine platform. They acquired a company up to 525 million in April of last year. And Bavarian Nordic acquiring vaccines for a company, Emergent, for 270 million upfront. So the finances here are quite significant, and we do realize that. And even on the metabolic side, you can see the equivalence. And Novo Nordisk and Lilly, I tip my hat to them. They've been very active in this space. They've been driving their own GLP-1 agonist programs forward. Very active in the metabolic disease space with Novo acquiring a company in for Sago for new treatments and therapies for obesity, diabetes, and other metabolic diseases for upwards of just over $1 billion. And then Lilly acquiring a company, Nimbus, a collaboration with a company, Nimbus, for metabolic diseases for almost 500 million. So these are kind of eye-watering numbers, but that's what pharma is willing to pay when it comes to bringing programs into their pipeline. And there's always attrition in pharma. They always lose programs, so they always look to bring programs in. So that's why we're very active on the BD front. On my last slide, just as a reminder, we've got an outstanding team here driving the programs forward, an exceptional and proven track record of generating shareholder value. Again, we are targeting large addressable markets, and I think we've got some exciting programs in there that will find their way to the market and create some value in those markets. And again, unique and well capitalized. I think that these are challenging times for many companies, but as I say, 14.1 million in the bank as of June. That gives us a nice, healthy runway, but it doesn't lower our urgency, of moving the programs forward and ultimately partnering. So from a shareholder standpoint, just a reminder of near-term inflection points. So we're expecting to give an update on the oral vaccine program, the validation of the encapsulation. Lab-based validation for the RSV program is ongoing right now. So again, hoping to have an update on that before the end of the year. We've been very busy, as I say, doing the clinical trial preparation activities for, I would say, both 001 and the oral GLP-1. Those are, as I say, progressing towards the clinic in 2024. And again, the influenza AI program, just as I say, have the targets identified and moving those forward for validation. As I say, very excited to be having these programs moving forward. And of course, ultimately, it's all about partnering, and that's discussions going on in parallel to partner these programs. But as I say, very excited with the progress that we've made thus far, 2023, but even last year as well. And looking forward to continuing that momentum, in the next 2 months before the end of the year, and then back into 2024 as well. A very exciting time for Poolbeg. And, I appreciate your time this evening. I appreciate your attention. And as mentioned, happy to take questions as we have some time. Appreciate it. Thank you all.
Thanks very much, Jeremy. That was a very interesting presentation. I'll just remind delegates that if you want to ask any questions, click the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen and you can type your question in there. I also need to remind you all that Jeremy won't be able to disclose any price-sensitive information that hasn't already been disclosed by RNS without breaching market abuse regulations. So that does limit a little bit what he is able to say, and everyone should be aware of that.
I'll do my best, Mark.
Sorry?
I'll do my best.
Certainly. Thank you very much, Jeremy. Okay. So I'll move on to the first question. I say that because some of these questions do verge on that sort of territory. So JC asks, can you give any information on how partnering and sale is going for POLB W01? We've been told in the past there was a lot of interest from many companies. That might be difficult to answer. I'll just reframe it slightly and say, what milestones do you need to achieve before you're likely to be able to announce anything on that front?
Yeah, discussions, from the 001, as I mentioned, the data we generated from the LPS challenge, study earlier this year, delighted us, to be frank. We tested 3 different doses. We have identified, as I said, the medium and high dose were quite robust in blocking the inflammatory response. So again, very happy to see that. And as I mentioned, again, I don't like repeating myself, but it gives us confidence that now we have a drug. We know that if taken orally, it gets through the stomach, systemic circulation, gets into cells, it finds the target, binds the target, and inhibits its activation. So now we can apply that to various areas. So you're right, we started off in the severe influenza setting, and that is, still remains to be an issue. But I think happily, the discussions we've been having, not just severe influenza, but in the oncology setting, that's something where it's kind of piqued a lot of interest in that, as I said, and these are, pharma companies that where they have drugs, where the drugs are efficacious in the cancer setting, but they have these inflammation side effects that they'd love to get rid of. So as I say, we're kind of having some good discussions in that role, about running clinical trials to kind of test the hypothesis. So yeah, while I can't say directly kind of timings and names of companies, etc., I say BD is always a key focus for us. So there's always conversations, there's always discussions. But I think having those conversations on the back of the LPS challenge data gives us certain confidence and leverage that we'll get partnered on this program.
Thank you. So the second question, from Christopher, he comments that the share price is still around 30% below the IPO price. Bit of a difficult question for you to answer. When do you think we can expect to see the share price move significantly above the IPO price? What do you think will be necessary for that to happen? Let's put it
it's like, I think it's an interesting question. It's a great question. It's an interesting question. I think that, and I've kind of answered this kind of in a way before. I think with Poolbeg, we're very focused on executing on our strategy, on executing on our programs, generating, data from the programs. I won't, I won't use foul language, but the markets right now are just terrible. They're just awful. And I think it's,
agree.
When they turn, and we had meetings in London recently with brokers and investors, etc., and they're all waiting for it to turn. And my belief is, that when it turns, they'll look at companies like Poolbeg who have been executing in the past. They have been, when we state dates, we work really hard to meet those dates, to meet those milestones. So I think that, I could be facetious and say maybe it'll be Poolbeg will turn the markets, but as I say, we're just there to execute. We're in a good financial situation, as I say, that but we're hopeful that when it does turn and people look at back at the markets to kind of continue investing. As I said, there's macroeconomic issues going on globally, but if we look at ourselves and what we control, I think we're doing a really good job there. But as I say, we're all disappointed with the share price. You'd love to be above water significantly. But hopefully when the markets turn, as I say, we'll be a bellwether to drive forward from there.
Okay, thank you. So again, we're in a slightly sensitive area, but perhaps you can give some information that doesn't give too much away, but at least helps answer. So
Sure.
Peter is asking, can you give more information about the NASDAQ listed company you've mentioned? Sorts of amounts involved and any indication of the sort of market cap we're talking about. I mean, are we talking about a small cap NASDAQ company or something more major?
Yeah, again, Mark, to your point, these are one of those sensitive questions. The NASDAQ company we spoke to, they have a program. They didn't want to disclose themselves because they're looking for kind of next generation life cycle management program. So they want to see if the technology works first, and then it'll expand from there. So signing a full licensing deal, then I think it'll be made public. But this is kind of that earlier stage where they're kind of funding the programs, funding research to get the prototype work done. So hopefully in the future, say when we get a full licensing deal, we'll be able to announce that. But we're delighted with the partnership because, again, a lot of these companies, they go through thorough diligence on the companies they work with, on the programs, the platforms. So when they saw the potential of this encapsulation technology, they saw, hey, this could work in our setting, so let's try it. And again, as I say, they're thinking forward as well. So it's certainly validation around the encapsulation technology, but ultimately hoping that it transitions into a full license agreement. But we're excited to get the first one across the line, as they say, just from a validation standpoint. And like our colleagues at Cytoreason, maybe it's too much of an aside, but when you get one deal, you hope to kind of build from there and get multiple deals in the future for, as I say, these NASDAQ listed companies.
Thank you. Good to hear that progress is being made there. But could you just give some indication? Is this a small cap company or is it a substantial large cap?
I mean, it's a NASDAQ listed company. I mean, there are certain criteria over there. As I say, I don't want to narrow it down just from from just a sensitivity standpoint. But we're happy with we're happy with the collaboration thus far.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. A more straightforward question to answer. Are you moving with hVivo to the new Canary Wharf facility?
Yeah, our colleagues at hVivo, we kind of office share. I'd say we kind of we squat maybe anytime we're in London, which is quite regularly. We kind of drop in the open plan office, just grab a desk. So yes, the likelihood is we as needed we'll be dropping into Canary Wharf. But I've seen the progress they're making just recently, and it looks like it'll be a very impressive facility. But as I say, we're in London kind of regularly enough, but it's just kind of a drop-in hot desk situation, and we're grateful for their generosity.
Then, as someone not so familiar with your company, where are you based in the main then?
Yeah, so we've got offices here in Dublin, in Ireland, and we work out of there. And as I say, we have colleagues in the UK as well, who as I say, over back and forth, and that's why we're over regularly, obviously meeting with colleagues, meeting with partners, investors, brokers, etc. But but Dublin is where I work out of. Easy hop to London though. Easy hop.
Sure. Thanks, Jeremy. Okay.
Sure.
Okay. Well, again, the next question is a tricky one to answer.
Yeah, it's kind of two point. Again, I can't, again, as you said, market sensitivity, you can't really, be that, project, as it were. But as I say, happy with the data we have and, discussions that we're having. And as I say, we'll update the markets when we have something solid.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, I can answer the next question myself. The presentation has been recorded and you will be able to view it afterwards. Watch announcements from ShareSoc about that, and Poolbeg may wish to also echo our announcements so that other shareholders can access this presentation. Okay. So Sparky is asking if there isn't a partnership for POLB 001, would you intend to take it through phase 2 yourselves?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that deviates from our business model. As I say, we're excited about the data we have from the LPS challenge study. I think partnerships is the way we'll take that forward. I'll take his point, and again, I think that we have a healthy cash position, but I don't think, as I say, the business model is not to burn through cash, focus on programs. But as I said, the focus is on partnerships, and I think that's hopefully where we'll end up.
Thanks. Okay, will any announced AI drug targets knock 001 off the flagship position? Will there, in your mind, be a blockbuster identified?
I like Sparky J's questions. We should grab coffee sometime. But I think with the targets we've identified with the AI programs, and if I focus on the influenza, we've identified some really novel targets that have not been associated with infectious diseases before. So it's quite novelty there. We see from a partnership standpoint, that's we know pharma is they are interested in novel targets, so I think that's something they can take forward to. I think 001 is it's quite far ahead when it comes to drug development. As I say, being through kind of GMP manufacturing and the phase 1 data, the LPS challenge data, so a bit further ahead. So I don't see it overtaking, but we're hoping to have, as I say, exciting drugs, exciting targets that for our partnering purposes as well. But good question. So I think if it was a yes or no answer, I'd say I wouldn't knock it off. No, I think 001 is the something of the crown jewels right now, particularly as we're branching out into the oncology section.
Thank you. And Keith asks, what is the plan for 002?
Yeah, this program, I really like the approach here. This is for respiratory viral infections. It's both a therapeutic, if after you get an infection, and a prophylactic potentially. I see this as we're talking to people about non-dilutively funding. I think 002 is kind of ripe for that. Particularly where there's still the near-term memory of the pandemic. So this is something that could be interested from a non-dilutive funding aspect. So that's going to be our focus right there. And we have talked to kind of groups kind of stateside. Let's say that they're always looking for the next pandemic aversion therapy. So could be potential for that. But as I say, I think that's a non-dilutive route.
Thank you. And then Sparky again is asking about any intentions on a NASDAQ listing.
Yeah, we've said we'd that's the ultimate goal. We want to build the company, build the pipeline, build the value. This side of the water first, and ultimately getting to NASDAQ is an ambition. But again, I can't kind of talk about kind of timelines, et cetera. But I think ultimately let's execute here first, and I think then that'll draw the powers to be to go stateside. But focused, as I say, we're very focused on executing what's in front of us, and obviously keeping a broader picture of what's down the road.
Thanks, Jeremy. So that covers the questions from delegates. As someone that's not intimately familiar with Poolbeg, there are a couple of questions that I'd like to ask myself, if I may. First of all, concerning your AI partnerships, how are your AI partners remunerated for their work?
Okay, so when we established the collaboration, there was some kind of modest upfront payments. but a lot of it is back-ended. So we kind of structured a deal that, you know, we'd work in a collaborative basis, and what comes out the other end, that we would own what comes out the other end. And then when we develop and partner is the ultimate goal with you know, with pharma partners, then they'll get some downstream milestones and royalties, you know, on that end. So it's really backloaded from a Poolbeg standpoint. But again, as I say, the data that we had was you know, was quite exciting, you know, from the AI company standpoint. You know, the fact that they saw you know, great potential to understand disease. And obviously the targets and drugs that came out of that then that we own. So it's called back-ended, as you say. So it doesn't, you know, burn a hole in our pockets, for example, but, you know, it'll be back-ended.
Mm-hmm. But presumably it leaves you with a majority of royalty entitlements. Is that correct?
The value, yeah, we see the value as the majority of values in, you know,
and they get a proportion of it. That's a good arrangement. Thank you.
Sure. Sure.
Meanwhile, there's a couple more questions come in from delegates, so we'll move to those if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Any more disease targets for AI study from the hVivo database?
Yeah, again, that's a really good question. As you know, when we demerged from hVivo, we had access to you know, all, the you know, data they've previously generated for a term into perpetuity, actually, before, you know, for 30 months. We've used the RSV, we've used the influenza. There are other databases that we could use. There's other data sets that we could use. But I think, as I say, it's just a focus aspect right now. Let's see what we have. The recent AI, you know, collaborations have recently finished. Let's kind of, you know, as I said, we've mined them for targets and drugs, but now let's get that validation and see where we go. But I think, you know, as I say, you know, hVivo have a very unique, you know, data set, you know, database of their challenge data, and, you know, there is more there for the mining. So we'll see where the future holds.
So for the time being, you've got enough on your plate, but might be.
That's one way to look at it. But again, we can kind of dip in again, and as I say, we have a great relationship with, you know, with Cytoreason, for example. You know, they'd love to test a little bit more, but, you know, let's stay focused. We don't want to be doing too much either to you know, to lose focus on the priorities.
Okay. And then Barry asks about Cathal Freer. In a recent interview, he was asked which of his companies he'd invest £1 million in if he was given it as spare cash. And he stated Poolbeg very nicely, without explaining why. Do you agree? Bit of an obvious answer.
That's the Americans call it a softball. Of course, yes. Barry, of course I agree. No, I think, Colin, you know, we talked about earlier on, these are kind of challenging and, you know, difficult markets. But when you look at the long term, when you look at, you know, and he gives the example of Amrit, you know, that when they formed in 2015, that, you know, they kind of, you know, they kind of started the ball rolling slowly. They in-licensed, you know, some programs and products and built the company. And 2023, so you're looking at kind of 8 or so years later, being acquired for 1.3 billion. So, you know, there is that kind of potential momentum, as, you know, and I gave it examples before that, you know, people look at kind of pharma companies. I mean, the world is, you know, the population is getting bigger and the average age is getting older. So there'll always be a need for healthcare. And so it's a question of, you know, bringing in, as we said, kind of very, you know, promising products, getting human data, and then partnering, kind of building, gaining some momentum there. So I think, we're kind of thinking kind of, you know, if Poolbeg could do that kind of similar Amrit route, wouldn't that be exciting? So we have, as I say, we generated some, you know, momentum, you know, 2 years since IPO, but we're in a terrific position with a pipeline, with, you know, with cash in the bank, with some really interesting data. So why not? You know, so if there's a spare, you know, £1 million out there, sure, you know, I'd go with Poolbeg.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Great question, Barry.
Okay, I'll slip in one more from me, if I may.
Sure.
Could you tell us a little bit about your science team that's sort of the engine room of your business here?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a team, and so our chief medical officer kind of works, let's say, on the front end, let's say the clinical side of things. We've got clinical operations, you know, again, 15 plus years kind of in the industry, kind of running and executing clinical trials, which is terrific. We've got assigned, you know, our principal scientist, Liam Tremble, brings an unbelievable amount of knowledge for immunology and oncology to the company. A lot of knowledge and expertise across. Interestingly, I won't say we stole him, but he had experience with hVivo, so knows the clinical trial setting as well, you know. But He's brings a lot of knowledge and expertise, again, PhD level. And we also have a scientific advisor, kind of project manager, looking after the DTIF aspects as well. And then, and I mentioned this before, the thing about Poolbeg, again, from being managing the burn and managing the spend, we dip in and out of a lot of expertise, from a contract standpoint. And I think, for example, in the side reason study, there was a very experienced bioinformatician, kind of joined us in the assessment of the various targets that side reason identified, again, to prioritize those. So we can kind of dip in out of various experts and expertise. So, quite, as I said, there's a great team that way. And of course, I'm a biochemist myself as well. So, I kind of bring a little bit of scientific knowledge, a little bit, to be dangerous, but yes.
Okay, right. I will just mention as only the oral questions, I think, appear in the recording that
Sure.
Pete Martin challenges what was stated about Amrit. I just suggest that any investors do their own research about the takeover stroke merger of Amrit. Okay, well, I think that about covers it. So that was very interesting, Jeremy, and wish you all the best with your business. And I think we'll wrap it up there. So thanks very much, Jeremy. And
appreciate it, Mark. Thanks for your time, and thanks for everybody for joining.
Thank you. Okay,
right, appreciate it.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Bye for now.